I'm just starting. So, good morning, friends. Hearty welcome to all of you at the next edition of the VDMA CEO's Thought Leadership Series. And pleasure for me today to welcome Mr. Guruprasad Mudlapur. Mr. Guruprasad Mudlapur is currently the Chief Technology Officer of Bosch Limited, a regional president and managing director of Bosch Automotive Electronics India Private Limited, Bangalore. And since January 2018, he also heads the project house for electrification within Bosch India. He joined Bosch in August 2008 and held various roles in engineering management. Mr. Guruprasad holds a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering from Bangalore University and has completed executive general management program at IIM Bangalore. So thank you for joining us, Guruprasad. Pleasure to have you with us on this edition of the VDMA CEO's Thought Leadership Series.
Thank you for having me, Rajesh. It's my pleasure.
Right. Guruprasad, now we are deep in the second wave of COVID, and it has impacted businesses, it has impacted workforce. What has been the impact of the second wave on Bosch Automotive Electronics India Private Limited? And especially, Guruprasad, you have a large workforce. So how are you managing that? And if I may add to that, what do you feel going ahead is going to be the new normal at Bosch Automotive Electronics?
Okay, so a lot of questions. Let me run through one by one. So COVID second wave has had a different kind of an impact compared to the first one, for sure. It's much deeper. It's affected a large number of our associates and their families too. So that's been something we see as a big difference compared to what we had during the first wave. Many hospitalizations, and this has impacted operations quite a bit. And we're doing everything we can to make it better for our associates. But yeah, you know the situation even outside. So it's a very, very hard battle for everybody here. And as Bosch overall and as Bosch Automotive Electronics, we're doing our best to make it as good as possible for all our associates. We also see that our supply chains are impacted quite a bit with lockdowns in different parts of India, transportation issues, then citywide restrictions. So a lot of these things have affected supply chain. The OEMs are impacted. So we've already seen some OEMs announcing shutdowns, complete shutdowns for a week or so, or even bringing forward some of the maintenance shutdowns they had planned later during the month or in a couple of months. So it's a clear indication that there has been a big disruption of the overall chain, right from the OEMs all the way down to our suppliers as well. The oxygen shortage for industry also has a big impact, and rightfully so. It's been diverted to all medical needs today, but this has an indirect impact on the situation we face today. We also face a large amount of absenteeism in our workforce. This is a consequence of either the associates falling sick or their families falling sick, and then they have to care for them. And a lot of them are just traveling out of Bangalore. So this is also something that we are watching very carefully and trying to see how to manage. This is a sort of a double whammy for us because already since late last year, beginning of this year, we've been suffering from a serious semiconductor crisis. Right. So the COVID second wave comes on top, and this has a significant impact overall. So how are we handling this? I think we're doing quite a few things. A lot of business continuity measures are in place. We have some of the strictest safety standards in the industry for manufacturing. So very, very tight control on a lot of things. I must say that we can't really trace many infections or even few infections to what happened at workplace. So that's how good our internal enforcement has been. But I must admit, we really don't know if this can be sustained. With the way it's going on, this is something we have to keep a very, very tight watch on. Already during the first wave, we realized the importance of masks, and we set up our own internal mask line, not just for our associates, but also as a CSR measure. Till date, I think we've distributed more than 3 million masks to society, to frontline workers, hospitals. So that's been our little contribution also to make our environment safe. We have seen in recent weeks a severe shortage of oxygen, and we've started to look at internally setting up an oxygen generation unit for our plants, and if there is surplus, also to distribute to the society, if not now, maybe in subsequent waves.
Right.
We will vaccinate all our associates and their immediate family as soon as we are allowed to do that, and there we take a lot of care. A lot of it will also depend on how the rest of the ecosystem falls in place, and there we're doing our best to ensure that our suppliers are well educated on these aspects. Some of them are really very small, and there we're doing our bit to bring in higher levels of education on this. You asked me about what's the new normal. I would say several things strike to me as a new normal. Social distancing seems to become a new normal, and at least during the second wave, getting close to somebody seems to be an offensive thing, and yeah, that's how it is. But we need to learn to live with that. Work from home has become, or I would say work from anywhere has become a real normal these days, which was unheard of maybe 2 years ago. Occasionally people took that, but these days it's become very normal. The IT infrastructure has stood up really well. So that's helping us do a lot of good remote collaboration, working together, especially on video and other collaboration platforms. So that's become a new normal. We've also moved labs to people's houses or associates' houses, wherever that is permitted or possible, also with safety in mind. So there some small amount of equipment they have to do basic work, and they of course log in remotely to the labs and make that happen. So overall, I would say these are some of the new normals we are getting used to. The overall uh, additional thing I would say and stop is that we realize these waves will keep coming till there is a mass vaccination or herd immunity developed across India. And this is something we are preparing and looking at how can we do better with regards to subsequent waves as and when they happen, and how do we start to prepare for that. So this would be some of the things we are doing as part of our new normals now.
Right. Thank you, Guru Prasad. I think quite commendable the good work that Bosch has been doing for the society also, especially in these difficult times.
Yeah.
And Guru Prasad, the work from home now with the second wave is a certain. So most of the colleagues are working from home. How's the production? How's the factory? How are you managing at the factory?
Yeah, the factory is required to be, I mean, the plant workers are all required to be at the factory, and they've been coming. And thankfully, although we have some absenteeism issues there, but we've largely managed to keep our plant fully operational and in all shifts that too. So there it's working well, but all support staff and all other office workers have started to get back to home and work from home. Um, we believe this also helps relieve the stress on common infrastructure like canteens and transportation and so on, where we can have additional social distancing for our plant workers when the rest of them stay at home. So we've tried to balance it that way and ensure that whoever has to be at work compulsorily is facilitated and with all due regards to safety.
Safety. Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Guruprasad. Guruprasad, as per a McKinsey ACMA report,
Mhm.
now they say the cost of auto electronic content as percentage of the total automobile cost in India is expected, in fact, to double from roughly around 24, 23, 24%. It may go up to as much as 45% in the next 4 to 5 years. Now, this would naturally offer a tremendous growth opportunity for your company also. So, how do you perceive this growth potential, Guru Prasad?
Yeah, I mean, you are right on that topic for sure. As head of one of the largest auto electronics companies in India, Tier 1, which supports virtually all OEMs in India, and we also have a fair share of exports. I cannot agree more with you on the statement. Auto electronics is something that's going to be very prevalent in all cars and vehicles moving forward. We already see trends towards 100 ECUs, although with different E architectures in the future, there may be consolidation of that, but that only means more complex electronics. So electrification will bring in its share of electronics. There's a lot of power electronics coming in there. Infotainment is getting so much more sophisticated and complex. Connectivity is coming into all vehicles. A lot of new cars today have some form of connectivity already introduced. Autonomous driving brings in a massive amount of electronics. Vehicle computers, as I said, is another area where a lot of electronics comes in. What has also helped this journey is, at least in the Indian context, a good amount of regulation. So BS6 came in and we had to bring in a lot of electronics. For example, two-wheelers were largely without electronics earlier. Today, they need electronic control units or ECUs to function. We and manage emissions. We also see ABS as a big supporting thing towards growth in electronics. So ABS requires ABS ECUs, and that really pushes up the content. So overall, electronics content is set to grow, and that will happen continuously. Just like software is continuing to grow in a very, very big way. And even the people say software is eating the world, but I think it is eating the world through electronics. So basically, it requires electronics to chew and something like that. Electronics is at the heart of everything, and there will be sustained growth in this. So we are also, what are we doing within Bosch? I must say we are already one of the largest electronics manufacturers in the auto sector. We have, the largest captive engineering center for Bosch globally in India. We do a lot of designs locally. We develop a lot of products for the Indian market. We manufacture a lot of them. We have recently set up a division called Cross Domain Computing Solutions XC, which pulls all the divisions where there is a need to bring in all computing solutions together to make integrated solutions happen in the automotive world. So this is something that we've done. So there is a lot of focus within Bosch on continued electronic growth. And in India, we are happy to be part of this journey, and we will support the Indian auto OEMs in a big way on this.
Right, right. Guruprasad, also the pandemic, in fact, has made manufacturers relook into their whole digital transformation strategy. Now, you are also currently the Chief Technology Officer at Bosch Limited. In what way can smart manufacturing with digital transformation address the challenges arising out of supply chain disruption? You also earlier in your earlier statement, you mentioned about difficulties you're facing on the supply chain issues also. So how can we, to a large extent, try to mitigate these supply chain disruptions, Guruprasad?
Thanks, Rajesh. I think it's a very valid question everybody is asking in the context of COVID. But I must say, at Bosch, the Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing started long time ago, and not really in connection with COVID, but simply to make our own manufacturing and supply chain reliable, robust, and resilient to any shocks that come in, and how can we be on top of all these things. Smart manufacturing is not a gimmick for us internally. It's certainly a sustainable thing which we need to bring in to make ourselves a very, very competitive part of the global supply chain. And the auto supply chain is extremely global now. And for example, in auto electronics, we import 75% of what we put out as ECUs. So all the components, all semiconductors come from different parts of the world, and the supply chain reliability is extremely critical. So we start to put a lot of focus on all three aspects of manufacturing: source, make, and deliver, to ensure that we have extremely good smart manufacturing or I4.0 solutions brought in. We have looked at how to bring in a lot more predictability into our orders, into our manufacturing, into our commitments. So try and balance the risks across the overall value chain, and we have integrated solutions to manage all that. Um, Creating a factory of the future has also been a very, very key part of the Bosch AIoT strategy. So we have the artificial intelligence, Internet of Things strategy within Bosch, where this is a very key aspect of how we look at the future. And definitely digital transformation is absolutely key towards this. And we see digital transformation as a big aid towards factory of the future. We look at the transformation in three key aspects. One is on basic awareness and making all associates fluent in the digital topics, be it an ability to have conversations around AI, about machine learning or data analytics, so or getting to understand aspects on how to have sensors in and how to get data out of the systems. So this is basic awareness that we are doing, and we've got a company-wide program across Bosch India on developing fluency for everybody. We also know that a large part of our operations need to be transformed, and there we do extensive amount of digital transformation measures. So be it introduction of RPAs, be it transforming processes which need to be digitized. So we do a lot of these things as well. And this has been going on already for 3 years or so. We've also understood that over the last 1.5 years, a lot of businesses themselves are transforming to digital. So this is business getting digital. To have a digital marketplace, to trade digital, to enable having platform kind of approaches to business from our traditional pipeline approaches. So this is something we are also consciously looking. So it's been a holistic journey on how we transform digitally and how we apply these to transform our operations. Look at how Industry 4.0 techniques can bring in higher levels of transparency in what we do, higher levels of data awareness, higher levels of predictability in everything we do. So it's a quite a holistic thing we're doing at Bosch today.
Right. Guruprasad, if I may add one question to this, of course, you are taking these initiatives, but do you find, for example, your vendors also adopting are they also transforming themselves digitally? Because I think the ecosystem will only work when your suppliers also, to a certain extent, can match up to your digital transformation processes.
I fully agree, Rajesh. I think this is a hard one. The smaller ones don't yet understand the importance of this.
Right.
And there are, I would say, the big ones fully get it, and they're with us in this journey. Some of them are even ahead on certain topics when we look at them. So there is a mix. So I would say the big ones are really taking the journey, driving it. Working internally to make these changes happen. The smaller ones really don't have a clue and they need a lot of support. This is where we chip in and integrate them into our end-to-end solutions. One example of that is we have tool makers who make tools, and we have I4.0 solutions implemented together with them on managing tool life. So we sitting within our plants, we can understand what is the life of that tool. How many parts has it pressed? How many more can it do? Is it now to be replaced? Is it reaching end of life? Should we do something about it? Should we help them reorder? So these are things we are trying to integrate. I'm just quoting one example on how we are bringing the smaller ones together. There's also a bunch in the middle which is neither there nor here, and they're a little bit lost. Some of them also questioning the relevance of this in the context of possible job losses, possible worries about additional costs, not giving returns. So there is a bunch in the middle, and I believe a lot of talking is required. And I know that CII does a lot of this, VDMA does a lot of these things, and we need to put together a lot more of an industry alliance to educate. We as Bosch also do a lot of training on this towards our supply chain and towards the industry at large. So we conduct Industry 4.0 symposiums. We bring people, train them on basics of this and how could they implement. We support them with implementation just to ensure that the overall value chain is digitized and ready to embrace smart manufacturing approaches. Eventually, as a country, I think we need to get ahead, and that's when we have a sustainable position in the overall worldwide value chains. So that's how I would summarize.
I think a very valid point you raised also, Guruprasad. I think everyone has to play a role if we as a country have to go forward in this.
Yeah.
Guruprasad, you mentioned earlier, let me come back to this point. You mentioned about electronic components being imported in the country. And the government of India has started the PLI, Performance Linked Incentive Scheme. In fact, for electronic sector, already the second set of applications, government has also selected the companies. So electronic sector is one sector where they are making good progress on this. So in your opinion, Guruprasad, can the PLI scheme and the incentives what the government is offering, can it act as a trigger for large scale manufacturing of, for example, semiconductors in India? Because the aim is to build a robust electronic manufacturing ecosystem in the country. So would this really help to give a boost in your opinion, Guruprasad?
Yeah, I would say PLI scheme is probably the first level intervention that we can bring in. to bring a certain level of cost parity or cost incentive to make a change in this overall thinking process. So semiconductors or a fab, as you are aware, is a very large investment running into a couple of $billion dollars. The technology itself is fast changing. I know my days of a semiconductor guy stopped when I was at 90 nanometers. Today, you're going sub 10 nanometer processes. So the world of semiconductor fab and manufacturing has gone in a very, very different direction, and it's very, very technology intensive. And it also becomes obsolete quite quickly. And semiconductors work on a scale. So we need to have global scale to make something happen. So we can, of course, attract companies to come and set up shop here. But we need to understand that the Indian market alone may not be good enough for the volumes a fab can produce on an annualized basis. So there we should be clear on how we incentivize exports, how do we ensure that the promotion is towards becoming a global hub rather than just to make something in that only fit for the domestic markets. I think we should also market PLI a little more aggressively and comprehensively, so that the big players have confidence that these policies are going to be consistent, they are going to help, and they're going to be in the long run. And I would say that we could even start, as you are probably aware, semiconductors has a front-end process and a back-end process. The back-end, to keep it very simple, is all about packaging a wafer. The front-end is all about building a wafer. So here we could simply say we start with the backends. We become a backend hub of the world, and then we move into also bringing in the front end part of it where relevant, and where India also has a large domestic demand in certain areas. For example, cellular phone ASICs and power electronics or things like that, and then expand from there. So that would be the way I would see it going. PLI should certainly be a very good trigger in this direction.
Right. And I think one very important point also what you raised, Guruprasad, is that actually PLI incentive is based on incremental growth. The export component at this stage is not being taken into consideration. So perhaps I think going forward, the government may need to also modify the scheme and perhaps give certain export incentive also. Of course, it has to be seen as long as it is WTO compliant also. Yeah. But I think this is a good suggestion. Maybe we start with the back end and then slowly move into the front end. As you correctly mentioned, the investments are quite huge here, what is required. Guru, let's come to one point which is which is discussed very often, especially among the German companies as well as generally among the foreign companies, is the level of skill set available in India. Now, you worked in Netherlands, you worked in Singapore, Guruprasad, Germany also. So, how do you compare the skill set presently in India, Guruprasad? Because the general perception is, although we have a huge number of graduates coming out, but their fitness for industry is missing to a certain extent. Very good in theory knowledge, but when the practical part comes, they miss out on that. So what is your experience and what would be your piece of advice or suggestion here, Guruprasad?
Okay, I think we need to distinguish. I mean, let me start it this way. I'm a product of Indian engineering education, and so are many of us here. So there's nothing to belittle the education itself. So there is quality education available in India for sure. What we should keep in mind is two factors in my view. One is um, how does an engineer come out, and so what is his level of preparedness when he comes out of the school, and how is an engineer getting exposed to in the industry or in the higher education systems to further develop himself. So two aspects to this. The aspect on how does he come out, I think there is premium education available in India, there is mid-tier education available in India, and there is a large amount of basic education available in India. And I'm now restricting largely to the engineering education. So there is a wide variety of people who come in, and that's pretty similar to many countries. But what happens is the industry moves so fast. Sometimes our curriculum and the exposure our universities are giving our engineers or the would-be engineers is not up to the mark. And so the industry spends a significant amount of money, sometimes between $30,000 to $50,000 on an engineer to make him really productive. And that's a lot of money to on one hand, we pride ourselves as a country which has very low cost of education, but on the other hand, if the quality of education is not up to the mark for a large number of engineers, the industry ends up spending that money to prepare them to be productive. So I think that's where a good amount of industry academic cooperation could really help. And I think that's something we should do very strongly. What could also be looked into and what can change for sure is how are we preparing engineers for different disciplines? So we know that manufacturing, for example, requires a large number of diploma holders or technicians and engineers with a mechatronics background and so on, which are not really the cool things today in the Indian context, where everybody wants to be a computer engineer or so on. So if we want to have a holistic growth in the industry, we need to support um, education of all kinds of engineers and employment of all these engineers. So that is a very, very essential part in my view. What we can also look into are topics like internships, which are really strong, which have a big industry benefit and work very closely with the universities to make this collaboration happen well. And we could also sort of look at how can we strengthen the industry academia partnerships in a significant way, which makes very productive engineers come out of the universities after spending 4 or 5 years in whatever they're doing. I would only say that gone are those days when an engineer would come out of an university at the age of 22, 23, and sort of be in the industry or in other fields for the rest of his life till retirement. These days are days of continuous learning and continuous upgrading. Every 2 years, every 3 years, there is some change in the industry, some change in the new areas that are coming in from be it manufacturing, be it design, be it software. So everything keeps changing at a very rapid pace. So what I would stress is one thing is the education as you have as the fundamentals when you come out and graduate from an university, but it's equally important to stay continuously employable. And for that, continuous upgrading on a very regular basis is absolutely essential. And there is so much of material online today. There's so much of post-university education possibilities on platforms like Coursera or EDX and other online platforms, or even going back to school kind of programs. This is something that is highly encouraged for all engineers. I think otherwise they become so quickly irrelevant in the context of how fast changes are happening in the industry. It is very difficult for engineers to cope. So I would say that would also be an essential thing if you want to have engineers fit for the industry for quite a while into the future.
Right, right. I think that's very crystal clear. You put it up very nicely. I think you've detailed this part, Guru Prasad. Guru Prasad, let me come to the last question for today. Now, with so many unforeseen factors colliding at once together now, Guru Prasad, it is in fact quite a challenging time for CEOs to chart a clear way forward for their organizations because there is so much of unpredictability that is prevailing now. What would be your three tips for leaders, Guru Prasad? How should they act or react in these challenging times, Guru Prasad?
Yeah, I think it's not a probably well thought out thing, but I'll just give you what's on the top of my mind on this.
Right.
Embrace digital. I think there is so much change happening today with new business models, with new ways of doing it. Embrace digital. Don't resist that change. Go digital, and that will certainly help. The second thing I would say is very basic, maybe brilliant execution is a great strategy. So just be consistent, methodical, follow good processes, ensure that the execution is brilliant, top quality, and that's what sets us apart. I mean, as Bosch, we believe very strongly in this, and there we value that quite a lot. So I would say brilliant execution is as much a good strategy as anything else can be. I would say keep an eye on short term while always be focused also on the long term. So both are very, very important. And especially in occasions like this, we are currently in a pandemic situation where there is a crisis and a fire burning on a daily basis. Keep an eye both on the short and long term. So if we don't make the right changes for the long term now, for example, if we don't prepare for the third wave and the fourth wave now, we will be left staring at the wall when things happen. So their preparedness and preparing ourselves, both not just in terms of business continuity, but also in terms of getting the strategy right, getting things covered for the future would be equally essential. I would summarize by saying maybe the cliched thing: develop people. They're very, very, very critical, especially in these times. Work very closely with people, develop them. They are invaluable assets, more important in any context than all the expensive machines we have in manufacturing, wherever. So work to develop people, and the results will be there after that. So that's how I would summarize.
Right. Thank you, Guru Prasad. I think if I were just to conclude the or sum up the 3 points: develop people, then embrace digital, follow good processes, and although have a long-term view, but also keep eye on the short term because of these disruptions happening. Yeah. Guru Prasad, it's been a pleasure interacting with you, and thank you for all the valuable suggestions, tips, and sharing your thoughts on the industry, electronic industry, the PLI scheme of the government. And on behalf of the German Engineering Federation, wishing wishing the Bosch Group, wishing you and your family all the very best. Stay safe, stay well, Guru Prasad. And I'm sure together we will come out of this difficult phase also. So thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, Guru Prasad.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you for having me on this program, and wish you and everybody at VDMA and all of you very safe time. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.